Have you ever noticed how many Black Americans will travel to like Paris, London, or the Caribbean, but when it comes to Africa, it's like a no-go zone? Well, today I'm going to talk about the 10 biggest reasons why Black Americans don't visit Africa. And trust me, some of these might surprise you. So, welcome back to my channel. It's your boy, Expat D. And this is where we talk about life abroad, culture, and the real conversations that other channels don't touch. Now, let's get straight into it. Okay, the 10 reasons why Black Americans don't make the trip to Africa, to the motherland. Okay, here's reason number one. It's misinformation. Okay, um, you got a lot of stereotypes from movies to the news. Okay, Africa is shown as either poverty, war, or animals roaming around. Rarely do you see like Nairobi's skyscrapers, across nightlife or Lagos tech hubs. So if your only image is what you've seen of Africa suffering, why don't you book a flight and pay all that money to go there? Okay. Reason number two is lack of exposure in schools. So in America, you got African history, and it's usually reduced to slavery and colonialism or colonization. Okay, not to mention empires like Mali, Kush, or Great Zimbabwe. So when you're taught about your roots, when you're not taught about your roots, it's easy to feel disconnected. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind. Okay, this is not within my list so much, but it should be. So a couple bonus ones. It's the flight. Okay, a lot of times going to Africa, the flight is like, I remember when I went from California, it was like 20 something hours. And boy, my legs were stiff being on that plane so long. It becomes a little easier to be longer on a plane now that they have like more movies and entertainment on a flight. But that's a long flight, especially if you're not one that travels abroad a lot. So it's a super long flight. I mean, long. Could be 18 hours, 20 hours. So sometimes when you look and you look at so many different Europeans that are on the plane uh, traveling there, it's about half the distance. Some of these European countries, it's like 5-6 hour flight. Maybe 8 hours, and so that's a little bit more on your radar than a place that's 20-hour flight away. And then of course, because it's a little bit closer, the price isn't as much. I know in the summertime, some of those tickets to Africa, they're like 1,500, up to like $2,000 just for one person. So the initial plane ticket could be kind of expensive. So that's something just to keep in mind. I don't think I have that on my list, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, let's look at reason number three. You got perceived safety concerns. So how many times have you heard, "Oh, be careful if you go to Africa"? But here's a kicker: some African cities are safer than U.S. cities. Okay, it's fear, not facts, keeping people away. Like I did a video um, when I was in Kenya, and I was shocked because it was like night, right? And it was safe. I saw like Asian women walking around, white women, white people, and uh, I thought it was like I thought it was basically like as soon as the it gets dark, you got to be inside. That's what I thought, but it was a lot more safer than I initially thought it was going to be. Okay, let's look at my next reason. Yeah, definitely cost misconception. So here's the thing. Um, People assume that Africa is too expensive to reach. Um, there's many flights to Nairobi or Johannesburg. They could, and now it could cost less than a flight to Europe. Okay, and here's the thing. So it's really not doing the math properly. So, okay, initially, the flight could be expensive. And this goes for a lot of international countries, people that just don't travel. Initially, the flight might be expensive, but once you get there, you may find like Airbnbs are cheaper, hotels are cheaper, just overall cost of living is cheaper. So it kind of averages out. But I think initially, when you think, oh my God, the plane ticket is so much money, and then of course, that's if you go in the summer. If you're available to not go in the summer, of course, it's cheaper. But you have to do the math and look at the overall cost of everything. Like if you go to a different country, it might be cheaper, like Europe or something. It might be cheaper to fly there, but then once you get there, what you pay for your Airbnb and your food and your transportation and your taxis and all that are some astronomical prices, and the exchange rate is not in your favor. So that's something to consider. Just doing the math in totality and understanding that. Okay, so now we're reason number 5. Just identity disconnection. So some Black Americans feel like Africa isn't their home. I guess you could say anymore. You know, Uh, Centuries of separation and being told we're not African has created a gap. It's like visiting a long lost relative you've never met. So it could seem kind of intimidating. So that's the thing. Identity connection. It does play a factor into it, but here's the thing. I think part of it is also distance and price. I would probably rank that more than identity connection. Just think about it. They'll take or we or whatever, we'll take trips to Hawaii. Like we don't identify with like Tonga people or Samoans and stuff like that. We don't identify with them, but we'll still go to Hawaii. So I wouldn't really rank that over price and cost, and price and how long of a flight it is. Okay, next is just peer and family influence. So if nobody in your family or friend circle has been to Africa, it doesn't seem like an option. You'll hear, why not just go to like Miami or Cancun or Jamaica? Africa's not really part of the conversation. That's something that I really feel like. Now, I'm gonna start talking about reparations, but I almost feel like every Black American person, I feel like, should get one free flight to Africa. And see, I know that's such an ambiguous thing to say because there's so many different countries within that continent. That's the tough part. Maybe we'll get one free DNA test and one free flight. That's the thing. If you find somebody that goes there, I remember when I went for the first time, and I was the only one of my friends that went, and I'm trying to tell them about how fun it was and how much I liked it, and everyone was just looking at me like I had like a pink kangaroo on my head. You know what I'm saying? Like they look at me like I was crazy because nobody was really talking about going there. It's kind of out of your peripheral how far away it is. But if you have some people that go there and they kind of spread the word how much they liked it, then that could get more people to go. Okay. Another reason could just be having a passport and just travel barriers. So only about 40% of Americans even have a passport. So if international travel isn't part of your world, Africa just feels like such a stretch. Compared to like a cruise to the Bahamas. Matter of fact, like I did a Bahama cruise when I lived in Miami. I went to the Bahamas and came back the same day. So that's just closer, cheaper. It just seems more obtainable. Now let's look at number 8. You have colonial narratives that still linger. Okay, for generations, Africa was painted like it's backwards or less developed. Okay, even some Africans in the diaspora grew up hearing these stories. These old narratives still shape how people, view the continent. I remember when I was younger and I used to date. I remember I would talk about going to Africa, and they'd be like, "Oh, you gonna date one of them?" And they were like selling, like talking this stuff like, they don't be taking showers, or they don't. It was something. I was like, what? Like, it was such a backwards comment, right? And it's just this hearsay nonsense, unfortunately. And that's just that's just how people thought. They just see it as backwards, and like, people are they look at it like they're still like living in huts and on trees, and you know if it's not just Africa. There's a lot. Just me traveling, not to go off on a tangent beyond Africa, right? Because I know this video is talking more about Africa, but I found that a lot. I really see, once I start traveling, just how much U.S. propaganda is out there. Because I feel like when I lived in Asia, I feel like so much of it was just unlocking culture shock, because it's like every single country I started traveling to, I started noticing, hey, wait a minute, I have these stereotypes in my head, and they're like way off base. And that's something that America does a lot, and it just makes them, it makes you just assume that they're better. When I used to tell people, yeah, I'm going to go to Africa, they'd be like, well, I bet the people are they always have this saying like, they're poor, huh? And I bet they're happy, like, you see, I bet you're happy you're back. Like, I was like, no, not actually, I liked it over there. You know, I bet you're so much more thankful for what you have over here than there. It was almost like a script. Like that's all they, I would see different athletes and stuff go over to Africa, and that's the first thing they would say. They just keep echoing the same thing. I just feel so grateful for everything I have now that I'm back in America. And I'm thinking, like, dude, like, everybody doesn't feel like that. I actually, when I went to Africa for the first time and came back, I was kind of jealous. I was kind of jealous of like how people used to hang out, and just the freedom that they had, the just having time for one another. Just how social things were. I was jealous of that. I wanted to be back in that type of environment ASAP. So everyone doesn't look at everything like in terms of materialism, but even in terms of materialism, I mean, the world's catching up. The world's catching up. Everywhere is not everywhere is not living in 1976. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the world has caught up. Like, when I went to Kenya, man, they had just good internet, uh, nice highway, lot of decent restaurants, a lot of really nice malls. It wasn't. Of course, they had good and bad areas, but it wasn't as backwards as they would make it seem, even from any stretch of the nature. It was not backwards. Okay, here's reason number 8. Okay, you have, excuse me, I'm on 9. Reason number 9 is just fear of culture shock. So some Black Americans worry that they won't be accepted, or they'll stick out as outsiders. So even though we share ancestry, the fear of not belonging keeps many from making the trip. And see, that's another, like, just an in. And I think I'm going to do a video on this, because we've had just like some ingrained stereotypes. It's like, as soon as I would mention Africa, they'd be like, they don't like you. You're not going to be accepted there. It's like, how do you know? Like somebody would tell me this after I've already traveled to like two or three different African countries. And it's like, dude, how do you know? Like, which countries have you gone to? Oh, that's just how it is. It's like, well, I've been to Africa. I didn't feel like that, So, but it's just, I don't know how they're able to spread these thick narratives, just thick narratives, and everybody's just, it's like this, and it's just like, what? Like, where did you get this from? But they spread it like wildfire. They don't like you. They don't accept you. They don't date people like you. I'm like, I tell you, it's a lot of healing that Black Americans need to go through. It's a lot because a lot of things, it's like there's all these objections, but you know what? We're from the Black American perspective. Even if you look on YouTube, a lot of videos, their videos are always like, what's it like to travel there and be Black? It's always this asterisk mark, and be Black, right? What's it like to travel to Kenya as a Black American, right? What's it like to go to Africa as a Black American? What's it like to go to Europe as a Black person? And they just make it seem like, it's always a question of, will you be accepted? Will you be accepted? Will you be accepted? It's just really, it's this phobia of not being accepted, that is narrative has just been echoing for years and years and years. It's a real thing. Like, that is a real thing. It's a real problem where there's just so much like fear of not being accepted somewhere. And it's everywhere. It's not just Africa, it's everywhere. Everywhere, right? First thing I usually get when I travel somewhere, how they treat Black people, how they treat Black people, how they treat Black people, right? And it's like, you don't like the way they treat Black people in America. So sheesh, you don't like it there either. Golly. So anyway, last one. Last reason. We've got Western destinations. Okay, so you know, look at the marketing. You have travel agencies, you have Instagram influencers, airlines that constantly push, Europe or Dubai, the Caribbean. Africa just doesn't get the same spotlight, even though it's just as beautiful and, more affordable in many cases. So a lot of it's just the hype. People are saying, oh, Dubai and Bali and Hawaii and, we're at like all these different places. Africa's, they're still like pushing this dollar a day feed a child thing. It's like, the crazy thing is, when you look at the media, they have done so much damage. And that's really, what's funny? What's funny is, when I went to college, my initial college degree was in communications. And my goal was I wanted to really even out the media, because I felt like the media just showed so many damaging images of Black people. And I wanted to contribute to let us have our own voice and really help eradicate those messages, right? And it's funny how things have kind of come full circle. And I'm like, oh man, I'm able to do that right now, right? So it's really cool how I'm able to utilize YouTube and also fulfill a purpose that I had years ago. And I just kind of put it on the back burner. I didn't think I would be able to do it, and look at me now, right? I'm able to actually do that. But the problem is, um, we really suffer, particularly not just Black Americans, Africans, the Black race, I should say, right? We really suffer from the media, because the media just does us dirty. The media, it makes Black Americans look like gangsters and thugs. Um, it makes Africa looks like starving, poverty. Uh, warlords, and it doesn't help us, really get to know each other and see beyond that, because the media has tried so hard to divide us as people. And one way of doing this is to travel. And see, here's the crazy thing that I've noticed when I traveled. I noticed that even in Africa, the people that speaks to foreigners, a lot of them, they're not black. They're not black Americans, because the foreigners that go there, they're from Europe. They're if they're from America, they're white people, white Americans, not black Americans. So they're still, whatever the stereotypes that they have, they're not actually meeting black Americans to see, hey, wait a minute, maybe this stuff is wrong. Just like the stuff that is spread to us when it's said, oh, they don't like you, or they act like this, or they're blah blah blah, right? You have to actually meet people in person and then make your own conclusion. And that's something that, because we're not traveling to Africa a lot, African people aren't really getting that one-to-one dialogue to see what's real and what's not, because they did us dirty, both of us, black Americans and African people, of just spreading, making us look a certain way in the media. They won't do themselves like that. That's one thing. Like, as much as I like, hip hop and all that stuff, I feel like it sets us back so far because of what it does, what our image is globally. What our image is globally. That's what messes us up. Because now I've got to pay for that. When I go abroad, I'm a teacher. The kids are like, yo, what's up, bro? What's up, bro? Like, they expect me to like start break dancing and freaking eating chicken. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, God damn, like, these stereotypes are hard. Like, how I understand I cannot beat these stereotypes. These millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, because entertainment is probably one of our biggest exports in America, and all these millions have just been pumped around the world, making us look like uh, us look like thugs and gangsters and drug addicts and all this stuff, and the world really believes that's the way it is. And if you pump enough money in it, people will believe that about themselves. So that's a problem. That's a problem. That's one thing that we have to beat the media. Yeah. So anyway, I think I ran it long enough, right? Just musha, right? It feels good. So that's my 10 reasons why, black Americans don't visit Africa. But, here's my take. Every reason on the list is also a reason to go. Okay, see the truth for yourself, and reconnect and break the cycle of misinformation. So now I want to hear from you. If you're a black American, do you want to travel to Africa? And if you're African, what do you think keeps us from us black Americans from making that trip? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Let's talk about it. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Let's get the channel to grow. Okay, because these are conversations that need to be had. Anyway, I'm Expat D. Thanks a lot for joining me. Peace and I'm out. Hey.